Hello everyone, welcome back to Ninja Nick 333. This is a Gardevoir mirror match at a League Cup at Flipside Gaming in East Greenbush, New York. We have our friend Scott on the left and our friend Nate on the right, of course, both playing Gardevoir. The key thing to this start right now is that Scott did start the Manaphy. Manaphy is not what you want to be having in play during a Gardevoir mirror match, because it's just taking up a space on the board that could have been used for literally any other Pokemon. The kind of the god start would be a Mew V in the active with 4 Ralts and a Radiant Greninja on the bench. And of course, that is one less Pokemon you can get there because now a space is clogged up by a Manaphy that's also not a Psychic type Pokemon, so you cannot Psychic Embrace to it. So if it ever gets bossed up or something, you need to make sure that there is still Psychic energy left in your deck or hand in order to manually retreat it. So makes things a little bit awkward at times. It also looks like Nate on the right here ended up winning the coin flip. He does start Ralts. Not the ideal start because you would rather start maybe Radiant Greninja or definitely Mew for sure. But Mew, of course, and Radiant Greninja are both one-ofs, so you're more than likely going to start Ralts than any other Pokemon in the deck. Cresselia is a weird start, but not too bad either. But we are going to be able to Battle VIP pass for 2 Ralts and just pass. Not the ideal start, but you do have 3 Ralts in play, and you know your opponent is not going to be able to really do anything about this. So again, this is a League Cup, so there will be a top 4 after this due to the amount of players. We do see an Iono here shuffling a pretty mediocre hand from Nate to the bottom. He did have a Kirlia in there at least, but maybe he will draw something a little bit more playable here off of that. Did get the Battle VIP Pass turn 1, which was very important. So Scott is going to Battle VIP Pass here as well. Probably going to get a couple of Ralts, maybe a Radiant Greninja if he wants to, or a Mew. Mew would be pretty good here. You could always find an additional Battle VIP Pass off of the Mew after you retreat into it. So it will depend what is available in deck for Scott. Looks like we are going to go for the alternate art Mew, the really nice Sleepy Mew art, and one of the Ralts here. So League Cups offer 50 championship points for first place, 40 for second, and 32 for the top 4 placements are the general most important numbers. I believe that top 8, if you have a certain amount of players, does give you 25 championship points. But a lot of the times when we do hit a top 8, you still need to win the top 8 in order to get championship points. I think they changed it in this season so that when you get a top 8 cut, you're guaranteed top 8 points. I can't remember exactly. That's what somebody told me, but I haven't confirmed it for sure. So guys, let me know down below about that. But this is the last event in our local area pretty much for this season even. This was recorded the week before NAIC. I did leave straight from here to NAIC. We took a stop for the night in Buffalo, New York, tried out this like famous wing place, which I got the mild wings and my esophagus burned all night long. Was worth it, but I'm not a big spice guy. I'm not a big heat guy like that, so it was a bit much. I always like my mild wings to not be too much I like that tiny bit of kick, but not too much. But yeah, my mouth was on fire. Still tasted absolutely delicious though. But yeah, definitely had heartburn and acid reflux for like 24 hours, 48 hours after that. Plus it didn't help that I ate a box of 24 cookies the day before that as well. So my stomach was all kinds of messed up for the better part of a week. So don't live like me. I gotta go to the gym again, man. I'm almost back to my max weight that I was in college. If you've seen pictures from me from like the 2019 season, I was pretty thin. I was like 160. I was like was I 140? I was 140. Man, I've gained like 60 pounds, man. It's crazy. I've lost a little bit of weight since this tournament even. I've lost like 10 pounds, but not quite where I need to be yet. Because again, not exercising. Exercise is important. So we are evolving into some Curlies, even get the rare candy for the Gardevoir here. So Scott did manage to get all 4 Ralts into play turn 1, which was a very stellar turn 1. But unfortunately, not only did Nate win the coin flip, but he also gets the rare candy Gardevoir EX, so he will be able to get the first knockout in this matchup as well. He could attack with the Gardevoir EX, or he could use this Fog Crystal to find a Cresselia, and even better, be able to knock out one of the Ralts on the bench instead of the active Mew. So there is merit to knocking out the Mew, because that would reduce Scott's chances of finding a rare candy of his own. But I think getting rid of a Ralts is always the more correct play, because that is one less thing that could become any type of Gardevoir or Curlia, making it so that their draw is a lot less good, because, you know, Mew could always just find Battle Pass, or it could find nothing even. So we see Nate here is going to go for the Psychic Embrace. He is going to start powering up this Gardevoir EX. We do get 1 energy onto it, and we are going to put 1 energy onto this Cresselia on the bench, retreat our active Gardevoir. Then we'll have 2 Pokemon with 2 damage counters each, so we can do 1 to 2 more. Looks like maybe we only have 1 more energy in the discard pile, but we are going to get 2 more by retreating this Gardevoir. So you could knock out the 70 HP Ralts instead of the 60 HP one, but if you don't knock out the 60 HP one, it could always come up and memory skip your Cresselia, and that would be really weird. So I think that it's still correct to go for the 70 HP one, you know, be able to get the most HP off of your opponent's board as possible. And if for some reason they did attack with memory skip, you could always just charge up the Cresselia and use the second attack, and you're still up an additional prize card because your opponent did not take a knockout either. So Scott is really going to be looking for a Gardevoir EX with a rare candy of his own here. So he does have an Ultra Ball along with, looks like 3 Psychic Energies and a Reversal Energy. He's not behind, or no, he is behind in the prize cards because he has not taken a knockout yet. So he could just attach that Reversal Energy to somebody. Even if he were to get just a rare candy Shining Arcana Gardevoir, as long as he can hit 1 energy off of the Shining Arcana, he would actually be able to attack this turn. Looks like we are going to go for the Ultra Ball on the Gardevoir EX to thin that out of the deck and increase our likelihood of hitting the rare candy. I think that if you're Scott, if you're not hitting the rare candy this turn, there's probably no way you can win if you already have a 2 prize deficit in a mirror match. So definitely Ultra Balling for this Gardevoir EX is a little bit of a risky play because you're not sure if you're going to be able to put it into play yet. But it's definitely the play that you have to go for because you need to be able to find that rare candy in order to even have a chance to win this game. So we still have the Worker here. Definitely play that, draw 3 cards, see where you get. And you always have 3 Ralts that could become Curly as well. 2 Ralts, really, because you still want to evolve into the EX. So we're going to use a Level Ball to find a Curlia. Even if he were to have found, like, say, 2 Level Ball off of that Worker, you want to use the 1 Level Ball to get a Curlia. Use that Curlia because then maybe you find a Curlia off the Refinement and then you don't have to Level Ball for it. And you could save that Level Ball for maybe, like, another Ralts after you Super Rod or something like that. Generally the correct play, although since he's specifically digging for the rare candy, if he had gotten double Level Ball, I think it would have been more correct just in this particular situation to get double Level Ball for double Curlia, but did not quite get there. Looks like we do get a Level Ball off of the Mew. We are going to be able to find our next Curlia. Now we just need to hit the rare candy off this Curlia or we basically just lose the game. So Scott, can you find rare candy to turn that last Ralts into a Gardevoir? I mean, he could always find another Curlia, turn that last Ralts into yet another Curlia, but even if he does do that, Nate just uses the Cresselia another turn in a row and maybe knocks out a Curlia. And then what do? You only have 1 Curlia and a Gardevoir EX in play, so looks like we already have the rare candy in hand. Okay, maybe we drew that off the last Curlia and I didn't realize it. So we are going to use the rare candy to evolve into the EX, and we are going to use our next refinement to draw another 2 cards. It looks like we have not quite drawn anything super relevant. I think you can just put that Stadium, the Temple of Sinnoh, into play, just to thin it out of your hand in case your opponent does Iono you. It's not in the deck to potentially be redrawn later in the match. It doesn't really end up helping you too much at all, really. I guess you could use it to bump an opponent's collapsed Stadium to get an additional bench spot, but I think in a Gardevoir mirror, I think you're fine with 4 bench spots for the most part. Especially with the pretty nice setup both of these players have with all of their Gardevoir lines really going. So he's going to Fog Crystal. He could get the Cresselia of his own here and try to knock out one of Nate's Curlias here. But unfortunately, it looks like maybe the Cresselia is prized, so that's really unfortunate for Scott. So he's going to have to he could either get the Zacian, which does not seem very good, or he can just grab the Psychic Energy. So it looks like we're going to go for the Psychic Energy. I think that's fine. Just thin that 1 more card out of the deck. So attach for turn to the benched Gardevoir EX. Play the Temple of Sinnoh. Now you can use your Psychic Embrace to retreat into the Gardevoir EX and take a prize. You do have to keep pace here. So he is just saying that he's going to be retreating the Mew and then Psychic Embracing that same energy back to his Gardevoir EX. So just like kind of like a shortcut. He's showing it for the camera too that he's doing that. But yeah, I like that he's showing it for the camera. I mean, if I were playing against him, he doesn't really have to do it. As long as I understand what he's doing, it's always fine to take a shortcut. Just like if you were to, say, play Super Rod to put a Ralts back in, and then it's just, you just, like, put it on top of your deck, and then you play Level Ball, and you grab the Ralts off of that top, you know? Like, shortcuts like that, I'm always a fan of, because that shows that you're saving time. That means you're valuing your opponent's time, and that you want to make sure that this match does conclude. These are best of 1 rounds for Swiss, and then top cut is best 2 out of 3. That is a requirement for League Cups to have top cut be best 2 out of 3 with a current rule change that happened actually right after this tournament. It was right before NAIC, I believe, they made that rule change. They also made a rule change about timers as well right before NAIC, where you have to be told the time in the round if you are asking for it. And that it is highly encouraged to have a clock in the room that shows the amount of time remaining in the round, which this tournament, this area, always has done that. These Flipside Gamings always put the time on the, or at least the East Greenbush one always puts time in round on the clock in the on the TV in the back of the room, which is always nice to see. They have a TV at the Clifton Park Flipside location, but they never show time in the round on that one for some reason. They do have a different, same owner, different staff, so they do things a little bit differently at each one, but it's fine. It doesn't really matter too much, especially when these rounds are 30 minutes. They almost always conclude without having a tie, and I always wear a watch anyway, so I always try to make sure I know how much time is left in the round. But it is important, if you are running a tournament these days, you have to remember that you have to have a timer, at least on your own person, so that if somebody is asking for the time remaining in the round, you do need to establish that, because I do know at some of these locals, especially the Flipside Gamings, they, the one in Clifton Park, they do just kind of forget to do the time in the round sometimes. And for their league challenges, they always do a top cut afterwards for a win-a-box. So they finalize standings on Swiss and then do the top cut afterwards for the win-a-box. And they never time their top cuts for that, which is kind of crazy. I had like an hour and a half finals one time for a win-a-box against my friend Tori, who actually got second at the Limitless Invitational the other day. So props to him. If you want to see his list, his username is 6. I think it used to be 666, but they made him change it. He's a fun guy. I love him. So we do get the Gardevoir with the Psychic Embrace here. So now that So this is the bad thing about Scott attacking with the Gardevoir EX, is that now that's in the active spot. Nate doesn't even have to boss it up, and his Gardevoir has plenty of HP from being able to use Shining Arcana and an attach for turn to just put Psychic Energies onto itself before damaging itself. Is now going to be able to get enough energy from the discard pile in order to be able to one-shot that Gardevoir EX. Of course, the damage from the Gardevoir EX that's done to itself does help a lot, of course. Nate just showing exactly how many Psychic Energies are on here. It's very hard to keep them all straight when there's that many energies. I like to do like 3 and 3 and 3 or something like that. Or 3 and 3 and 3. Something like that. Like sticking out the side of the card. The only time you really see energy like this, like previous to this, was like when you would see like Archie Stoys, you would just put like 9 energy on a Keldeo EX, and it would be a fun time. So at this point, Scott is 2 prize cards behind, because not only did he get the second attack off of the game, but Nate's second attack was on a 2-prizer, so he was able to now get a 2-prize lead. So Scott's going to have to find some way to combat that, and the best way to do that is Iono. And as you can see, Nate's hand is already 3 cards, so an Iono isn't really going to even help you in this situation unless you think your opponent really just has a good card in the hand right now. Or unless I just missed it and he just Iono'd. That's more likely. Sometimes I distract myself when I'm talking. So even a 3-card hand from Nate, if he draws for turn, makes that a 4-card hand, and then he has 2 Curlias, even if this active Gardevoir gets knocked out. He has 2 Curlias, so he can draw an additional 4 cards, so that makes 8 cards deep into his deck he can see in one turn off of an Iono, is still really solid. So originally I was not happy that they were printing a card like Iono because I was never a fan of N, but I think honestly in this format, Iono works very well. I think it's very necessary to combat things like Lost Box and Gardevoir itself here, even though Gardevoir does use it phenomenally. Although I'm always a fan of Pokemon changing their prize rules so the opposite person takes it. So say Scott was losing, he would have 3 prize cards remaining, he would have gained those cards into his hand. It's how all of the other life card games, all of the Bandai ones, One Piece, Dragon Ball Super, Digimon, and Kaijudo and Duel Masters always did the same thing with shields. So you give your opponent, when a player is losing, they're gaining cards in the hand in order to make a comeback. So that's why Pokemon has to print cards like Iono, like Reversal Energy, that activate when you're losing, but then it just makes things a little inconsistent. So, I mean, my dream game of Pokemon would just have the opposite person take prize cards, and then we wouldn't have a need for cards like Iono, Reversal Energy, and all of that. We could just play a much more skill-based game of Pokemon. But that's a pipe dream for me. It'll never happen. Especially since allegedly Expanded is coming back as is, which scares the bejesus out of me, basically. So we are retreating our Mew into the Shining Arcana Gardevoir. We are going to be able to put... we only need 3 energies on it to do the attack. So that's all we need to put on ourselves. Don't need any extra damage counters on ourselves. Don't need to remove energies from the discard pile that could be put onto one of our... other Pokemon in the future, if maybe we see a boss's orders from Nate or something here. So let's see, we are going to use our refinement, getting rid of psychic energy to draw 2 more cards. We still have 1 more refinement. I see another psychic energy and a battle VIP pass. You could discard either of those, would be perfectly fine. Especially if you have enough in the discard already as far as Psychic Energy is concerned. You definitely want to get rid of the Battle VIP Pass. Or you could Ultra Ball it away. It looks like that's what we're planning on doing here. I'm also always a fan of using Refinement first. Before the Ultra Ball. I apologize for the coughing, guys. I got sick from the smog in Columbus when I was at NAIC. It hit me as we were driving in. And I have not stopped coughing since. I really should grab another bottle of water. I'll do that after this game. I have like one drop left in here. I didn't have like a cold. I just had like congestion and like coughing from the, I call it the smog. It's the Canadian wildfires that were happening. Hit us right when we were there. The air was quite literally in poisonous levels where they told you not to go outside. And it seems like that's going to be happening for like the next year. The air quality is just going to be like this off and on pretty much in every part of the United States. So, I mean, yay us. Thanks, Canada. Isn't there an episode of South Park called like Blame Canada? Isn't there like a musical number in that too? If there is, imagine I'm playing that right now. I don't know. Canada's a really great place. They have free healthcare. I wish we had free healthcare. Instead, if you want to take an ambulance, you're going to be down like $3,000. So they pretty much tell you in America, you might as well just die, because if you don't just die, you're not going to be able to afford to live. God bless America. So we are just going to do a revenge knockout with Brainwave from the Shining Arcana Gardevoir. And yeah, Nate is just continuing to keep his lead. So on this next turn, he could always just knock out a Gardevoir EX and finish the game off and win it. That is asking for a lot of energy onto one Pokemon. So if he gets Zacian, maybe he could do that. If he were playing Champions Festival, that would allow him to get an additional energy on a Pokemon. But I don't even think he owns one of those. Again, Champions Festival, definitely not worth the price on it. And a lot of times it is better to just not play it. But I personally love Champions Festival and Gardevoir. I think it works out really well. Surprisingly not against Lost Box, because it makes it so you need to put more energy into play with Cresselia so that you get enough damage on your... Like, it doesn't work in combination with Cresselia, which is the only downside to the Champions Festival. But if you're doing these turns where you're attacking with, like, say, the Shining Arcana Gardevoir or the Zacian, you can get an additional energy on it from the discard pile that way. So it definitely has its merits. So if you already own a Champions Festival, I mean, that's cool. Play it. But if you don't, no worries. Just play Temple of Sinnoh instead. It's pretty good still. I think if you're going to put Champions Festival in the deck, you cut the Temple of Sinnoh. I think that's the most cuttable stadium in the deck. I think it's really only good against Lugia in order to make it so their Tyranitar can't attack. Otherwise, it doesn't really do anything to any other matchup. Like, Mew plays Fusion Strike energy now, so you can Elisa Sparkle to a dude. Just to get an additional energy card on it, and then you fulfill your... You know, then you have two colorless energies, because that's what Temple of Sinnoh makes any two special energy cards. And then you can still use Cross Fusion Strike. So, like, doesn't feel good against anything else. And, like, Rapid Strike even just, it can search a stadium every turn with its Octillery, so it just removes your stadium anyway. It never matters. Heck, I beat a Noivern deck online with Rapid Strike. So, yeah. Somehow, good matchup for Rapid Strike. It's just that, not that good of a deck, unfortunately, for Noivern. Noivern's good in Regidrago, but Regidrago is a pretty awful deck. I think Regidrago has merit in Expanded specifically, but if you're not playing it in Expanded, it's a bad deck. I was talking with somebody in the comments the other day about that. It did get Day 2 at NEIC, which is cool, but he did not do very well in Day 2. Actually, Day 2 at NAIC was just people who had never made Day 2 before who just got lucky Day 1. With pretty much all of them. At least all the ones I played at the bottom tables when I was scrubbing out, because I hit Duraludon round 1 and just bricked Game 3, which was awful. I think Duraludon is still a good matchup for Rapid Strike, but I did play Rapid Strike in this tournament. So you will see me a couple rounds during this playing the Rapid Strike with no testing. Rapid Strike is a very skill-based deck, so we're going to have to see how that goes for me. So Nate just doing some Gardevoir things. So he can just hit into the Gardevoir EX and it'll feel fine, because unless Scott gets either a new Zacian, yeah, if he gets Zacian or if he gets a new Shining Arcana Gardevoir, like Rare Candy, into it, is the only way he can try to contest the Gardevoir EX. And even if he does, you still only need to take the 2 prizes, so you would just have to find another Pokemon to set up to knock out the Gardevoir EX. So you could always just put energies on the Kirlia, put the Shining Arcana back into your deck, and yeah, just hit into the Gardevoir. But it looks like we're gonna Boss's Orders instead. I still think this is a fine play. I think I would personally rather hit into the Gardevoir EX, just establish as much damage as possible. But although, I mean, I guess Scott could always collapse Stadium to try to get rid of the Gardevoir EX if he gets a really hot turn. But he has 2 cards in hand and no ways to draw cards. So I don't think that that's really possible. I think I would personally hit into the Gardevoir EX. But again, this is still not a bad play. He is going to Psychic Embrace to his Ralts. Or, no, sorry, to his Mew so that he can retreat. Did not discard the energy yet. There we go. That is fixed. We are going to put the energy on our Gardevoir EX itself, and we are going to knock out the Ralts. Since we did put back a Cresselia into the deck, and just in case our Gardevoir EX somehow does go down, we are going to start loading up this Kirlia on the bench with as much energy as we can at this moment as well. Just so that we have a way to beat a 1-prizer. So all that Nate needs now on the next turn is either Shining Arcana Gardevoir with Boss's Orders or Cresselia, and he just wins the game. Although if the active gets knocked out, it's a little weird, just because then he needs to find a new Gardevoir EX potentially to do the Cresselia play. Although if he just has an attachment for turn, he can just move damage off his bench to Pokemon to the opponent's Mew and win the game that way. So yeah, he either needs Boss's Orders with Shining Arcana Gardevoir, or he needs Cresselia and an attachment for turn. Either way, that will win Nate the game. And I think if you did attack into the Gardevoir EX, Scott would try to retreat it into maybe a Zacian or something different in order to one-shot your Gardevoir EX. And I guess in that position, then that does force you to find another Pokemon, whereas if you don't hit into the Gardevoir EX, then at least you've taken a prize card. So yeah, I think what Nate did is definitely more correct than what I would have done. So Scott does get a couple more Ralts onto the bench. Of course, he already has 2 guys that can be knocked out by a Cresselia, so putting those other 2 down onto the bench isn't really going to affect the outcome of this game. It's just making it so he can find more ways to find Gardevoirs and Kirlias, or put them into play in future turns. So he is attaching to the Mew on the bench so that he can potentially retreat it. And we are going to see the Cresselia already in hand. We are going to Psychic Embrace to it, and we are just going to retreat and knock out any one of the benched Pokemon, and Nate ends up winning the game. So props to Nate. That was a good match. He just got lucky, and it looks like he circled Scott as the winner. Oh, I bet you I know why he gave Scott the win. So he beats the crap out of Scott and gives him the win. So Nate has already won a League Cup and got second at one. And he's not going to Worlds. So he already owns a Vulpix mat. So he's giving Scott the chance to earn one for himself. So Nate, being the good guy that he is, props to Nate, giving Scott the chance that he needs to try to get there. As always, guys, do not forget to comment, like, and subscribe. And I will be on the next round of this League Cup. So we will see you then.